Hi everyone, Granthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest gospel music nerd, today with a review of the new 1820 The Musical, the album. 1820 The Musical was set to be a live performance in front of people in 2020, but right when COVID happened, they had to shut down every performance of 1820. And when this happened, the cast and crew got together and they decided to do the next best thing. The cast and crew got together and they started to go to the studio and make every song, transcribe every song, which was originally just music, and make it into digital tracks to put on a studio album. So the cast and crew did not go into this project with the intent of creating an album. They had the intent of creating a musical. But instead, because they had chosen to create an album, we get a weird dynamic of some things here on this record. This album was not thrown together last minute, but it did have sort of a time crunch that the cast and crew had to come together and release these songs before they were able to have this show in person. Now, you are able currently to buy tickets for the show. You should go buy tickets for the show, but if you are to listen to this album now, I believe we as the audience are missing some key factors to being able to understand more about this musical. Some of the key factors that we're missing in this musical is things like what happens in between the songs. Now, that happens with every musical. When we listen to a studio album as opposed to seeing it in person, we are missing a lot of the story. Now, it's a challenge for this because this is a new story. This is a story from the perspective of Emma Smith. It's one that we're not used to hearing. So because we're not used to hearing this story, we are missing some of the connectivity that brings these songs on this album together. The producers of this album were trying to do several things at once on this album, and I think the album suffers a little bit because of it. Some of the things that they were trying to do on this album include creating a modernized story with modernized music. And so you'll hear a lot of instruments on this album that you might not be expecting. You hear guitar solos, you hear funky NSYNC things, you hear a lot of digital mixing things that you wouldn't hear on an album that comes from 1820, you know? And that's really fun, it's really interesting, and I think there's definitely a place for this. I think a lot of that influence comes from other musicals that we have seen, especially Hamilton. This musical definitely wears a lot of its influences on its sleeve, but we will get into that. Another thing that this album tries to do is tries to tell the story of Emma Smith. It tries to tell the story of the Restoration from the perspective of Emma Smith. However, there's 19 songs on this album, and 9 of them include Emma. About a few of those also are just duets between Emma and Joseph. This album is definitely, even though they claim that it's from the point of view of Emma Smith, there are a lot of the perspective of Joseph here. And I personally would have loved to see more from the perspective of Emma Smith. Another thing that they try and do on this album is they try and talk about some of the relatively important social issues of our day and some of the discussions that we're talking about today that I'm not sure they were having those discussions then, and we certainly haven't had those discussions in the past few years of the church. So this album is trying to bring to light some of those discussions, and we definitely appreciate that as a modern audience. Some of those topics include polygamy and what Emma Smith's thoughts and what she was dealing with when polygamy was a thing, as well as racism and what some of the conflict between races were during this time period. Another thing is being critical of Joseph and taking a look at some of Joseph Smith's original motives. There's a song on here that talks about him being a treasure seeker and him not denying that, you know. And so we do have a fun discussion of some of the themes that we haven't heard historically through the narrative of the story of the Restoration. So I think they did a great job on that on this album. So I sort of have to review this album as a studio album, and it's difficult for me to review the musical as a whole. I know I've already talked a little bit about the musical as a whole, and it's difficult for me to do that because I haven't seen the musical. I've only listened to the studio album, and they really are two different things. Because I'm missing that dialogue in between songs, I'm not really sure how much of the story is from Emma Smith's perspective. A lot of the story could be from that. We're just missing it on this album. So I'm not able to fully critique the musical itself, but I am able to listen to the studio album and critique what I hear on that. I hope that a lot of the things that I have I want to see altered or that I have conflict with will be changed in the actual production of the musical. That being said, there are a lot of creative decisions that are made on this album that I think when the musical is in production in front of a live audience, I think we will see a lot of the creative decisions that we see taken on this album maybe taken in a different direction. And therefore, a lot of the problems that I might have with this album, I might not even have with the musical itself. Some of the confusion I have on this album comes from their usage of modern music and modern instruments and modern mixing with some of these traditional songs and traditional storylines and a musical that takes place in 1820. Like I say, it's sort of in vogue, it's sort of popular for musicals to do this because of Hamilton. Hamilton isn't the only musical whose influences we see on this album. We definitely see a lot of Hamilton. We also see a lot of The Greatest Showman. There's a song on here that sounds exactly like some of the Disney princess songs. One of these songs sounds exactly like Love is an Open Door from Frozen. So, this being said, I wanted to get into a track-by-track review of the album and just go through some of the things that I really liked, some of the things that maybe I was confused by on this album. Overall, I really enjoyed this album. I can definitely appreciate some of the creative decisions that the team took on this album. One of my favorite albums is Lamb of God by Rob Gardner. And that is a musical or an album or an oratorio that takes itself very seriously. 1820 the musical does not take itself as seriously, and I think there is a lot of room for that in the church, in the music world, and I do appreciate a lot of their creative decisions because of that. A lot of this album is silly. A lot of it is songs that are catchy and upbeat that you'll be singing along in your head, that will get stuck in your head, and I definitely appreciate that. This album will grow on you. After multiple listens, you will find yourself singing the songs. At first, you might be a little caught off guard. You might be expecting a musical that's sort of told from the perspective of Emma Smith with language and dialogue from that time period. If you're expecting that, you're in for a wild ride. However, if you come into this musical with an open mind, you'll be able to enjoy some of the songs and just be able to enjoy it, have a good time with some of the songs. And I definitely appreciate that creative direction. This album starts out with a song called This I Know. And This I Know is exactly what we want. It jumps right in with Emma Smith, told from the perspective of Emma Smith, and it features the amazing vocals of Kayleigh Lowe, and she absolutely crushes it on this track. They jump right in, not wasting a minute, not skipping a beat, with this awesome sort of stripped down instrumental, piano, violin, and that's it. The problem with this track that I have is that around the minute and 24 mark, some of that digital production and that digital mixing comes in that comes to create this drama and to create a more dramatized track, which I really don't think is necessary. And what I'm talking about is this faded echoing clap. That's sort of corny, it's sort of cheesy. I don't know where it comes from, but you'll hear it and you'll immediately think that this comes from, I don't know, some old school dramatic effect. That being said, this track is definitely great. Lyrically, it's awesome. The next song is Safe in Carthage Jail. Safe in Carthage Jail is not told from the perspective of Emma Smith. We already have the second song is told from the perspective of Joseph Smith. It's very intense. We get these very aggressive mobs, which I think are a little overplayed. I don't love this song. It seems like it lacks a little bit of direction. You can definitely tell there's a computer-generated string section on this song, which lacks a little bit, and in the live production of the show, that might be gone. The next song is called All About Timing. This one is also not told from the perspective of Emma, but here we are introduced to an awesome song between Hiram and Joseph, and we really get a feel for what Joseph's character is going to be like on this album in this musical. This song definitely has some simple music, but this song also has our first guitar solo of the album in the second track, and so it will take you off guard if you're not ready for it. The next song is called What Does It Change? What Does It Change is also not from the perspective of Emma Smith. We sort of get a lot, this track is very heavily produced in post. We get a lot of heavy computer mixing, a lot of these sounds that kind of make it sound like a boy band, like NSYNC. One of the refrains actually sounds a lot like The Call from the Backstreet Boys. The next song is called Joseph's Plea. This is another great song. However, again, it's not told from the perspective of Emma Smith. This one musically is stripped a lot down. I definitely enjoy this track. the singer David Osmond's voice is definitely able to shine on this track, and he does a great job. I really also love how this song correlates to a song later on the album called Emma's Plea. Great job. So that's a fantastic song. The next song it jumps into is called Objection, and you can tell this is one that the cast and crew really love. However, it did leave me a little bit confused because I'm not sure what the dialogue is that leads into this song. Here we have Joseph in a courtroom setting. However, we know that Joseph Smith spent time in court because he went to jail in 2 separate occasions. We're familiar with those stories. We're familiar with Carthage Jail. We're familiar with Liberty Jail. However, why he's in trial at this point in the musical, at the beginning of the musical, when it's too early in the story, he hasn't even married Emma yet, we are confused on why that's happening here. I think this song could be placed later in the album and make a little bit more sense. I think it feels a little out of place here. This is definitely our first direct Hamilton rip. You will listen to the song, and a lot of the almost rapping on this song comes exactly from Hamilton. You'll listen to it, and the problem with ripping off Hamilton or taking a page from Hamilton is that Hamilton is a really high bar to hit. Now, we will be able to recognize that, but when you're aiming for the bar of Hamilton, a lot of people will recognize the lack or the difference there. And although the song is really great, it's difficult to say that it matches up to what it's trying to emulate. This track is also cool because it mentions Joseph being a treasure seeker and him maybe not having the best motives at the beginning. And that's awesome to hear from a work that's supposed to celebrate the church to maybe be a little bit more critical of Joseph. The next song is called Kiss My Cheek. I really enjoy Kiss My Cheek. It's an awesome duet, a really fun duet between Joseph and Emma. And here I think this album, this musical really shines what it's really going for, which is fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to help us fall in love with Joseph and Emma and their relationship, and Emma Smith especially. And we get a lot of that character development on this track. Now, this track does sound a lot like Love is an Open Door from Frozen, but I don't care because it's obviously a great song, and they do a great job with character development in this track. The lyrics are also really great on this track. They do a good job of the rhyme scheme here. Lyrically, musically, the song is really great. And even though the music itself isn't modernized, it still fits in really well. The next song is called Mysteries Yet to Tell. Here we have another song that's just featuring Emma. This is our first song since the intro track where we have Emma by herself. This is a great song. However, the faded claps are back, and they're creating this fake dramatic effect that we didn't see on the past couple songs, but we did see in the first song with Emma, and here we are seeing it again. Here you can definitely hear how talented Kaylee Ann is. She is a phenomenal singer. For this track, I will say, and just in general, she is definitely a country singer, and coming from that country background, you sort of get some of those flavors in her voice, those country flavors in her voice, and they do stand out in the live production of this show. I'm not sure Kaylee Ann will be singing every single one, and so we will get a little bit more flavor from different voices from Emma. So it's hard to say that I wouldn't cast Kaylee Ann on this role, but she was definitely involved in the creation of it, and she absolutely blows this track away. Kaylee Ann, great job on this track, great job on this album. The next song is called Sleep on My Child. The violin on this track is phenomenal. Here again, it is a little over dramatic, but there is a good balance between singing and music on this track. The next song is called Alive in Christ. Again, not a song from Emma's perspective. David Osmond's voice really shines here as well. This is I've Got a Hallelujah. You're going to be singing that. This is going to be a song that's going to get in your head. This song feels a little bit like something you'd hear on Hercules. The next song, 70 by 7, is a really sad, really dramatic song. Again, we have David Osmond here. Not really sure where Emma Smith is on this track, but this song is really good. It's really well written, and it seems more like how we'd imagine Joseph singing. The next song is called Kiss Forever, Bye Bye. The contrast on this song, it is this weird groovy song that sounds like something from Young MC. It comes out of nowhere, especially when the track right before it is 70 by 7, this super sad song. We have this weird digital production on this track as well with this weird twang noise that was obviously added in post-production. This song is probably the one that I have the most problems with just because it comes out of nowhere. The musical instruments on it are primarily digital. I'm not really sure what to think about this track. I think it could have been left off, but you normally get a song like that, one or two on every album, every musical. The next song is Who Is This Man? And just to make matters worse, Who Is This Man is a phenomenal singer with some incredible talent on it. This song is definitely one that you can tell the cast and crew really love. I will say the same thing with this song. We're not really sure what leads up to this song or who the main characters singing in this song are, but the talent on this song makes up for it. They are incredible singers. The lyrics and the refrains and the chorus on this track, you will be singing as well. The next song is called Made for Forever. Here we have a duet between Joseph and Emma, a really great song. Here, this track and the next one are similar in how they feel. They sort of get across the same feeling, which is this feeling of things are tough, but we'll get through it. And that's sort of one of the problems I have with a couple of the songs on this album, is that they have the same exact feel. Even though they're great songs and they are definitely different, they could be replaced into the musical in so far as what the feelings being portrayed to the audience and what the feelings we want the audience to feel are concerned. It's a good musical song. There's definitely some weird plops and bops and electronic sounds on this song that sort of are in the background. It doesn't really make the music modern, but it does add a little bit of musical weirdness and strangeness to this track. The next song is called One Day We Will. I like this one a little bit more than the last one. Like I say, they are very similar in the feeling that they get across. This song does feature mentions of polygamy and Emma's viewpoints on that, which is definitely appreciated here. We would have loved to see even more. The next song is called Tale of a Lunatic. I'm not sure what happened on this track, but the choir on this track is noticeably different than the choir that we heard before. I really enjoy the choir on this track. Something about the mixing, something about how they're brought together is really great on this track. However, the anger that we see from the mob, the angry mob here, is a little bit played out. It feels a little bit played out, a little bit corny. It would be cool to see a little bit more of the perspective from the mob. I'm sure when in 1820, if any one of us had been back then, some of the claims that Joseph was making would have been very bold. And so I think it's sort of easy to sympathize with that angry mob. Now, they definitely took things way too far. They definitely caused a lot of harm and a lot of damage. And it's difficult to really stand up for them, but we would have loved to see more of a nuanced position from them instead of the normal old angry mob trope that we always see regarding those people. The next song is called Emma's Plea. This is a great harken back to the song that we had earlier called Joseph's Plea. This is a normal song, normal instruments. It's told from the perspective of Emma. Great song. This next song is called One Last Ride. It's a duet between Joseph and another character. I believe that other character is Hiram, but we don't know for sure. This is a really great track. Both of the singers on this track are really phenomenal. But the second to last song not being told from Emma's perspective, and you can see how that might be a little confusing. The last song is called I'm Still Here, and this is a phenomenal way to top off the album. Here we have a song from the perspective of Emma Smith singing about her trials. We are not really sure where this takes place in the story. I'm going to assume that this song takes place after Joseph's death. I think that's when the emotional high would really hit the hardest on this track, and I believe that the lyrics on this track are really brought out by that. I think the lyrics on this track are really great. Now, I will say that it does serve some of the same purpose that we see earlier of a song saying, hey, things are really difficult, but we're going to get through it, right? We do have that on this track, but this track is an excellent top to the album. It definitely closes things off, leaves things on a bright note saying, hey, things are going to keep moving forward, but leaving us with these emotions of Emma, like, wow, holy smokes, everything is so hard and so difficult, but we still believe, we're still here. Awesome vocals by Kayleigh. She absolutely crushes on this, She absolutely crushes it on this track to close it off. Overall, this is a good album. I really enjoy it. I enjoy their creative direction. I would love to support the cast and crew however I can on projects like this. I would love to see more projects like this in the future. Religious musicals like this are awesome, and I don't care what creative direction they take. As long as more musicals like this are coming out, as long as more albums like this are coming out, I am happy. Now, I will say there are some things on this track, some creative direction that I would maybe have changed if I were in charge, but it is important to recognize that this album was thrown together in a period of months, right? And because they had to throw everything together kind of last minute after COVID was shut down and they weren't really sure what to do, they knock it out of the park on this album. They do a really great job with what little time and having to adhere to COVID restrictions and whatnot. They did a really good job on this album, throwing it together. I think if they had more time, it could have been even better. They could have gotten more studio instruments instead of having to use and having to substitute some computer generated sounds. And a lot of my confusion or the difficulty I have with this album, if any, comes from those computer generated sounds, that mixing, that post-production on some of these tracks. I hope and I believe that that will go away when it comes time to actually see the musical. I also think once we are able to hear and see the full story and the whole storyline of the musical from Emma's perspective, we'll get and we'll understand a lot more of what's going on, who the different characters are on this album. What did you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? I'll see you guys in the next review. Thanks so much for watching. And seriously, if any of the cast and crew are watching this, thank you so much for this production. I'm really excited to see it in person. Everybody, please go pick up a copy. Please, if you're able to see it in person, go see it in person. The best way to get and to hear more musicals like this is to support the artists, right? And so if we're supporting these artists, they will be able to create more music like this. Thanks so much, you guys. You did a great job.